You've felt this before. You react to something instantly, and only later do you realize what you actually felt. Maybe you pulled away from a person without knowing why. Maybe you agreed to something and immediately felt wrong about it. The reaction came first. The understanding came later. There's a quiet discomfort in that moment. Not fear, not confusion. Exactly. More like your body already decided something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. What's unsettling isn't the reaction. It's the delay. The gap between what you do and what you can explain. Most of us live inside that gap without noticing it. We move forward as if the explanation was always there, as if the reaction and the reason arrive together. And once you start noticing that gap, it becomes hard to ignore. I remember the first time I caught myself mid-reaction. I was scrolling, half distracted, when a video made me tense up. I skipped it instantly. No thought, no reason, just a reflex. A few seconds later, I wondered why. The video wasn't loud. It wasn't offensive. It just hit something I didn't recognize at first. That moment stayed with me longer than the video itself. That's when it starts to get interesting. Psychology reveals that your brain is constantly scanning for meaning before you're aware of it. Not big meaning, not conscious interpretation, subtle signals, tiny shifts in tone, a look that lingers too long, a pause that feels slightly off. Your brain reacts to those signals faster than language, faster than logic, faster than explanation. Researchers suggest that decision-making often begins emotionally, not rationally. But that idea stays theoretical until you see it happen in your own body. Think about the last time you trusted someone immediately, or didn't. You probably say it was a vibe, or intuition, or just a feeling you couldn't explain. But what if that feeling wasn't random at all? What if it was your brain matching the present moment to old patterns that shape your life? Patterns built from moments you don't consciously revisit anymore. Experiences you assume no longer affect you. Here's the strange part. The brain doesn't ask permission before it reacts. It doesn't wait for clarity. It acts first, then hands the story to your conscious mind to explain afterward. That explanation feels like truth. It feels personal. It feels intentional. But sometimes it's just a cover. I've noticed this in conversations. Someone says something harmless. I nod, I smile, but something in me tightens slightly. We're alone, or replay the moment. I realize it wasn't what they said. It was how fast they said it, or what they didn't say at all. Human behavior is full of these quiet cues. We respond to tone before content, energy before words. Most people think they decide, then feel, but often it's reversed. And that raises an uncomfortable question. How many of your choices feel intentional, but weren't really chosen in the moment you think they were? Your brain is built to protect efficiency. It loves shortcuts. Cognitive patterns form, so you don't have to analyze everything from scratch. That's useful, until it isn't, because those same shortcuts can trigger reactions that don't match who you are now. I've caught myself avoiding opportunities that looked good on paper. I told myself I was being practical, responsible, grounded. But deep down, it felt familiar. That feeling wasn't logic. It was memory wearing a disguise. Emotional triggers don't announce themselves. They don't feel dramatic. They whisper. They nudge. They feel like common sense. And the brain is very good at making them feel reasonable. Here's where it gets subtle. Once your brain reacts, your mind starts building a narrative, a clean story, something that sounds like you. We rarely question that story. Why would we? It feels natural, but sometimes I wonder how many of my past beliefs were just post-reaction explanations. Ideas formed after the decision was already made. That thought alone can make you pause. If your brain reacts before you understand why, then awareness doesn't begin with thinking. It begins with noticing the reaction itself, not judging it, not fixing it, just seeing it happen. That moment of noticing is small, almost quiet, but it changes how the rest of the experience unfolds, and most people never stay long enough in that moment to see what comes next. Once you start paying attention, these reactions appear everywhere, in who you respond to quickly, in which ideas feel exciting and which feel strangely heavy, in the way some people drain you without saying anything wrong. Nothing dramatic happens. That's why most people miss it. Your brain is constantly reading situations the same way you read a room the moment you walk in. Before you speak, before you choose where to stand, you already feel where you belong. That feeling guides what you do next. Researchers suggest that much of decision-making happens through anticipation, not analysis. Your brain predicts how something will feel before it happens. Then it quietly pushes you toward or away from it. The prediction comes from the past, but it pretends to be about the future. This is where things get uncomfortable, because the future feels open, but your reactions are often already decided. I've noticed how fast I label things as, not for me. Certain conversations, certain opportunities. Sometimes I call it preference, sometimes maturity, but occasionally, if I'm honest, it's just avoidance that learned how to sound reasonable. That realization doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet, like catching yourself using a familiar excuse without remembering when you learned it. This isn't about something being wrong with you. It's about how human behavior actually works. The brain evolved to protect efficiency. It prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar possibility, safety over accuracy. And safety doesn't always feel like fear. Sometimes it feels like indifference, like boredom, like a lack of motivation you can't quite explain. Most people think hesitation means they're thinking deeply, but hesitation is often a reaction waiting for a story, and the story usually arrives clear, convincing. It sounds like logic. It feels like maturity. It feels like you. Here's the quiet contradiction. The more confident the explanation feels, the less likely we are to question the reaction that came before it. Confidence can end curiosity. I've had moments where I felt sure about someone almost instantly. Only later did I realize that certainty came from a single detail, a tone, a look, a pause. My brain flagged as important. At the time, I didn't notice the reaction. I only noticed the conclusion. Psychology reveals that we seek patterns before we seek truth. Coherence matters more to the mind than accuracy. So the brain fills in gaps. It smooths over discomfort. It turns emotional triggers into logical conclusions. And once that happens, questioning yourself feels unnecessary, almost disloyal to your own identity. Decision-making feels conscious, but often it's awareness catching up to something that already happened. This doesn't mean reactions are useless. Some are precise, some protect you, some guide you better than logic ever could. The point isn't to fight them, it's to notice them. Because the moment you observe a reaction without immediately explaining it, something shifts. The reaction loses a bit of its authority. You're not above it. You're just no longer fully inside it. That space is small, almost invisible, but it's real. In that space, you might start to notice how often your brain confuses familiarity with truth. How old emotional patterns quietly attach themselves to new situations. How certain people feel comfortable for reasons you never consciously chose. You might notice how quickly discomfort gets labeled as a problem. How fast the mind tries to escape uncertainty, as if not knowing we're dangerous. But uncertainty isn't always a threat. Sometimes it's just the absence of an old script. That can feel disorienting, because your reactions no longer explain everything for you. They simply appear. You may notice how silence becomes more noticeable, how pauses stretch longer, how you don't rush to define what something means. You may even notice how your identity feels more flexible than you thought. How many of your preferences are repetitions, not decisions? How many opinions feel solid only because they've never been observed closely? And how many patterns that shape your life were formed quietly, over time, without your conscious permission? This isn't about changing who you are. It's about seeing who you've been reacting as. I catch myself now, mid-judgment, not stopping it, just watching it appear. Sometimes it's subtle irritation, sometimes warmth, sometimes resistance without a clear object. I don't always understand it, and that's part of the point. It's uncomfortable sometimes, but also grounding, because if your brain reacts before you understand why, then understanding isn't something you force. It's something that emerges when you stay present long enough. Life rarely slows down for that. Most days move too fast, too loud, but every once in a while, you notice the gap again. The reaction, the pause, the explanation forming right behind it. And in that moment, you realize something quietly important. You are not only the story you tell yourself, you are also the space before the story begins. And maybe that's enough. Not to control your mind, not to rewrite your past.